My name is Eileen Baccus, and I currently reside in Florida, having spent most of my adult life in Connecticut. I am President Emeritus of Northwestern Connecticut Community College, and I was president for 18 years in the system in Connecticut, and spent my entire higher education career there. So with Achieving the Dream, I was fortunate enough to be one of those who came along at the very beginning. And as a consequence, I've had the pleasure of working with, over the full inception till now, at least 9 of the institutions. So I coach from Vermont to California. And I've had the pleasure also of watching this initiative grow and blossom and become even more than we could possibly have imagined as we sat in Tampa some 8 years ago. So it's just a real joy to see how we've grown, how this initiative has taken hold, and how we are really a movement now across this country, and we are really beginning to make significant differences in the ways our institutions improve student success. I fought a lot of years against even being in education. I left college and got a master's in business administration and was determined not to be in education because practically everybody in my family had been in education. And I said, there has to be something else. But I guess in essence, it was in my genes. So I worked, actually fell into a position at the University of Connecticut some years ago, and I began there with working in student services. I worked in financial aid, which is really a place to get your baptism in higher education, and worked at the University of Connecticut for about 11 years. And again, tried to get out of higher education, went back into the corporate world. I had worked for IBM before I worked for UConn. And you know, it just had a way of drawing me back. So I ended up looking for a position back in higher ed, and there was a presidency at one of the then Connecticut technical colleges. And that was my first foray into community or technical colleges in Connecticut. And that was the beginning of it. So as I began to be more and more immersed in the 2-year system, became very active with AACC, served on the board for several terms, and when you deal with our students, you just get such an appreciation for what higher education does for the life of our students, and you can't help but be passionate about it. You know, it's really difficult to, as you say, there are so many different factors that get in the way. But I think if I really had to boil it down to one thing, most students, most community college students come into our institutions not fully appreciating what it takes to be a college student. And they really have a misperception of what they're capable of, all the things that they're capable of juggling at one time. So I would say really not understanding that it's almost impossible to have a full-time job, support a family, take a full load of courses, and not have life get in the way of completion. So I would say that that combination of factors that you don't fully appreciate until you get into it, and then those impediments start to get in the way, that's probably the single most important factor that really bothers our students. So, but we're working on it, and that's the really great part, because now our institutions almost across the board are focused on that freshman experience or whatever college success courses, so that we get them to understand early on what it really takes, how many hours of homework you really need to set aside, how many different factors you need to look at as you plan your course of studies from semester to semester. So we're getting there. I really think that probably among all the strategies that are currently in place, again, that freshman experience or college success course is almost the most important thing you can do, so that students are taught early on how to study, how much time they need, and just understand and commit themselves and become organized to learn. So that by and far, to me, is the most important thing we're doing in terms of the strategies. Secondly, of course, so many of our students need developmental courses, and our ability to improve the delivery of the developmental education courses, the second most important thing probably across the board. But I think those two are the biggest things that we're doing in terms of strategies. That is all across the board. Almost every institution is dealing with those. It is at the heart of what we do. Equity, the whole issue of equity is at the heart of what we do. And so that means that all those structural things that are there, structural inequities, those are the barriers that we have the capacity to remove. Sometimes it's as simple as improving the registration process. Sometimes it's not so simple as trying to smooth the financial aid process. But there are just so many things that get in the way. And so we have to look at what it is at a single institution in its own community with its own students to determine which ones or which inequities exist. Because they're not all the same, but we all have them. And that's the beauty of achieving the dream. You look at the institution itself, not in comparison to any place else. What are you doing? What is in the way on your campus? What is stopping your students from moving forward in a more successful and faster manner?